That thing needs to be turned on. Let me do it. Don't know how to do it. Hold on. On switch. Can you hear me okay without the microphone? Done. So, good afternoon to you and the people here who are new this afternoon. Make yourself at home as much as possible. This is our space. It's meant for you to drop in. It's not meant only for ongoing participation. I try not to repeat things, but to include things that have been said and to offer some dimension for them. 1, 2, my interest in being here is to meet them in new ways. Meet people that I've known for a few weeks, for a few months, in an evolutional, expanding way. For those of you whom we've never met, feel invited to ask anything at all that's interesting to you about me or about you, about life, that you're provoked by, and feel included in this group. For those of you who are watching online, from my heart to yours, thank you. This afternoon, the second day, the second session, I spent the lunch period eating a bit of mango and feeling how I felt. And I wrote down a number of topics that I thought would be interesting to me. I don't really want to present the whole table of contents, but I wanted to start with inviting you in this first couple of minutes, if there are topics specifically interesting, related to you. I'd like to personalize this experience as much as humanly possible. It's one thing for me to present, and it's another thing for us to participate in a completely different dimension, to interrelate in a co-evolutional way with issues in our lives, so that we become more and more living examples of what we hope to achieve or have already in our lives, but more so in our daily lives, so that this experience becomes an experience of elevated communion. And I use the word communion very carefully. To me, it's far more intimate than relationship. Communion, reverential, sacred, divine, authentic, dignified, conscious-based. How to create dimensionality into authenticity. How to be more playful, satirical, comedic, hilarious. It's extremely existential craziness that we're embedded in this thing, that we've got to even work it out. That we're relating and talking with this body and this mind and these orifices and these senses that are just programmed on to change, decay. The random roulette wheel of genocide and birth and rape and famine, that's part of the deal in this Las Vegas that we're stuck in. Fuck you, God. I don't want to work it out. You fucking work it out. I'm tired of doing drugs. You do the drug. Fair enough? Stop being a victim is my point. Take on the biggest fight imaginable. I call it radical activism, mystical activism. Nothing really sacred about dealing with evil. You got to fight. And I really want to encourage people that as meditators, as Dharma students, as activists, whatever we're doing in our lives as lovers, it requires at times radical fight. We've got to be stronger, more powerful sometimes to rise above. Fair enough? So I'd like to include that in the dialogue here. What does it mean to just, get sober about it all? What does it mean to get stronger, more embodied, not just yinned out with another 20-minute fucking stretch? It's cool to chill, but sometimes it requires dancing in a high solidarity with passion, courage, and forthrightness. You got to stand up in life, fair enough? I once had a friend of mine, we were monks together in Burma. I found my way out to a genocidal area of the country that was under siege by the military. I eventually wrote a book that was asked of me about this experience called Burma, The Next Killing Fields. It was a title taken from Cambodia's genocide that happened some years before. And I was walking through this genocidal, fucking crazy sociopathic jungle as an observer, an attendant to the insanity of this thing, hoping I could report something back to the Western world. And there was a line of us walking through this crest and through this valley, all with armed rifles and automatic rifles and guns and various things going down. And I don't know about you, but maybe it's obvious to you that it's easy for me to judge people. Don't feel like it's you. It just comes with the territory of being human, that you see things that generally just aren't really right. Right? It's a fine edge between inquiry and discernment, judgment, projection, blame, make wrong, scapegoating, self-deception, pleasing, all those dynamics of interrelated convolution. But I'm really adept at kind of wearing how I think, if you haven't noticed, way out front. I kind of exaggerate it because it allows me a greater frequency to see myself. I can be so cunning and so skilled at hiding and converting back into these more nuanced puppeting behaviors that you wouldn't even really know it, that I'm really not exactly so sweet. It's kind of obvious. But look about you. I mean, what are you pretending to do? So I was on this walk through the jungle with these friends of mine. One particular friend, we were monks in the monastery together. And he left the monastery. He left the monastery to take up armed revolution against the dictatorship. Unlike Aung San Suu Kyi, who was advocating in the country feminine-inspired passive resistance using the power of the voice, the power of Gandhian nonviolence, lots of students took up the gun. Imagine if here I was advocating armed revolution. How many of you would stay? Not many. But if all of a sudden over there at Champuan we saw a ridge filled with insurgents who want dead fucking white spiritual people on their barbecue tonight, where would you go? Especially when there's no motorcycle to escape. You'd rise to the occasion, wouldn't you? Who would wimp out and cry into the corner? I can't say that I could do it, but I walked who did. And there I was judging these people. I had the audacity to judge them without really being honest about it. And he could feel it, you know, in the jungle, and it's crazy when you're on acid or you're on some kind of psychedelic substance or you're on intimacy and love. You truly feel things that you normally can't feel. Well, in the jungle like this, you really, really feel. Things are psychic. Everything is life and death. So there I was walking along with my fucking stashed American passport, my cigarettes, my Valium, my antidepressants. I had all the weapons that I needed to keep me subdued from feeling the terror of being out there. They had guns and conscience and passion and care for their people. They were radicalized. But I was still stuck in the dogma of a state of consciousness that really prioritized, there's got to be a different way, guys. Nonviolence is the way to confront injustice. So my friend who disrobed, who gave up his meditative career in the monastery to take up armed resistance to the regime that wanted him and his family and his wife and his kids and his countrymen and women dead. People on earth like people dead who are in positions of power. We're sort of the okay types that are surviving on the outskirts of frontline politics. How many wars are going on right now in our name that we pay for? Collusion, complicity. How many of you pay taxes? What's most of it used for? Oppression. Thank you. Thank you. When we're going to come out of the collusion of this kind of denial. I do the same thing. He could feel that I was judging him. He turned around in the midst of this silence, threw his AK-47 in my chest and says, "You fucker, you have an American passport." I'm paraphrasing. "You can leave any damn time." Any time. Do you get that, Alan? You're outrageous. You're crazy. You're sick. You're judgmental. You're nobody. You're not a Dharma teacher or student. You're nobody. You're out here trying to help our people, and all you're doing is obliterating my conscience and my courage with your fucking American judgment. That's an exaggeration, but it's not even exaggerated enough to tell the truth. And I was. He kept doing this, egging me on. Here's the gun. It's your fucking wife being raped in front of you. What are you going to do, be a dead right pacifist fucking American Buddhist? I mean, sometimes it requires getting in your face to challenge the comfort zone, the dogmas, the belief systems, the belief system. I'm an addict, man. I don't give a fuck what you tell me. I'm in recovery. I'll fight you tooth and nail. I'll kill your ass in the name of freedom. I'm an addict. I'm a Republican. I mean, think about what we stand up for, what we deny. It's really complex out here. So I'm going like, "Hey man, what's going on?" You know, it's like, you're the fucking combatant, I'm the fucking reporter. You know, pretending that there's a distinction he's making here, like, you've got a role, I've got a role. No, he's saying, you're judging me. You're judging me. I'm protecting your fucking sorry ass. Think of that. Think of the high volume of compassion there. My point is, there's such a distaste that I have today for judgment. I don't know about you, but I've opened up the whole gamut of the dark, the shadow, people, points of controversy. My activism, my nonviolence, it took me a long time to come to the realization that I'm actually a hypocrite. I'm in denial most of the time. If it's not obvious, I am flawed. I am not to be trusted. I could harm you. I would stand up for you. You're fucked with, I would protect you. I would not run away. You're with someone who would kill. It took me a long time to come to that realization. I'm not a pacifist. I'm a discerning, radical individual who fucking gives a shit. And I'm inviting you here, what do you give a shit about? So much of the Dharma and meditation is so fucking passive. But within the revolutionary areas of the world, Burma, a country that was seated in deep dignity, people went to prison for each other. I got a 4-volume set of books coming out called Burma's Voices of Freedom, former political prisoners. They gave a shit about something. One of the greatest lessons I've learned post-monastic life is to give a shit. Really care. Not just about your family, your principles, your values, your states of mind, that too, but fucking give a shit about something in life that you're willing to fucking stand up for, voice your opinion, take a position, become really a human. So he forced the issue on me. Here, you stupid fucking American. He classified me as a stupid fucking American. Arrogant, small-minded, judgmental, moving away from the real issue, kind of gaslighting the situation, if you know what I mean. That's disgusting. Oh, you're not really, no, you're the problem. Hate that kind of psychology, don't you? You want to slap someone silly when they gaslight. And so he said, here's the gun. I'm the reporter. You protect my ass for a couple of nights. Okay? He wasn't going to back down. You want to understand our country's revolution? You fucking participate in it on both sides. There was no way out. It was a psychological, existential dilemma. I've written about this in a book. He fucking said, you fucking put that gun in your arms and I want you to start shooting. He was the head of the whole thing. He was my friend. We were passive together, eating mindfully. Eating, tasting, same teacher. He was fucking radical. He was giving me a hard, deep, psychological, emotional, existential lesson. So the first time I ever shot a gun in any real-time life as an adult, an automatic AK-47, those things are really intense. I pulled that thing and shot it. It was like, fuck, man, this is over the top. I can't even imagine if there's a human in front of me. He says, get ready, dude. You might have to kill to save my ass. He took the gun and walked on. Okay? He was killed the next day. Killed. Written about it in my book. Killed.
Where was his gun?
It was in his fucking arms.
Did you see it?
What's that?
Did you see him get killed?
No, I didn't. He was on patrol, but he was a dead body. That I did see. Well, the next day, we're hanging out, and they had found the fucking guy who killed him. Okay? All documented. And so they had to go back out on patrol, and what did they do? They left the guy that killed him with me, with a gun. Real existential Frankenstein moment. They said, watch him. If he runs, kill. So here I am in this deep apocalyptic jungle with a gun at a fucking person's head who killed my friend. I'll tell you, I wanted to kill him. It just rose up through me. Like, you motherfucker. And we're looking at each other. I speak a little bit of Burmese. He was a Burmese military guy. And we're just hanging out in this apocalyptic fucking dumb jungle, slightly stoned on opium and fear and terror and existentialism. He's just looking at me in the eye, trying to kind of like suss me out. There's no one to protect this whole fucking thing. And I'm going like, I'm not any hero. I'm not a Rambo type. And all of a sudden, he reaches slowly for his back pocket. I am tenser than anything I'd ever known in my life. I'm going like, this is not cool. But I don't know how to say this is not cool in Burmese. So I'm having to anticipate, is this movement to his back pocket about a pistol that's been overlooked, or worse yet, a knife? So I have to do the unthinkable, which is simply put a fucking gun right to his head. What would you do? Stretching beyond the limits of my mindful intelligence training, blah, 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 blah. So he continues the behavior. He's looking at me with his hand in his pocket, and I've got my gun right between his eyes. And he's making incredibly deep, Akasha-like contact dance presence. This is future twin flame in the worst possible scenario. There's not going to be any orgasm on this scene. It'll be bloody. So I'm telling him in my own mind, please don't. I'm going into psychic response. Survival and psychic response. Make a long story short, he slowly pulls out a picture. And he turns it around and shows it right at my face, and it's him as a monk.
Oh, wow.
Now I go into like deeper terror. Deeper terror. He's pleading with me that we're brothers in our soul. And I could see him crying. Just crying. I don't know whether it was fake tears acting tears, what you train in military school tears. Did I make him cry through my fear? Is it authentic? Is it authentic? Is it authentic? You know, when you're looking at your lover, is it authentic? Where do you really know that you can trust? We don't know, do we? This is a life and death trust moment. Anyway, the next day, as we all parade down to the front lines and to the riverbed where all the other captured soldiers are in cages, he decides to make a run for it. And he is instantly obliterated and shot on the spot. He's not dead. And I go over to him and I kneel down and I look up at the friend of mine who was a friend of the person who was my friend who was killed and say, please don't. And then my other friend, who I had been befriended in the jungle with, an American who was in Vietnam, who was out there training a lot of the soldiers on the revolutionary side. He just simply tapped me on the shoulder, lifted me up, said, Alan, this is not your war. Another existential dilemma. What's more important? Letting the context have its integrity, me intervening yet again with what appears to be the emergence of compassion for this injured person who killed my friend and who knows who can kill other people, knowing that we had shared a monastic life together in the connection to that. You know where I'm going with all this? Look at how intertwined we are. Well, they shot him on the spot. It never was something I could get over. It's written about in a couple of different books of mine, and tragically there are photographs that have appeared in magazines about this. The overall state of mind, we're in an existential conundrum. There is no way to figure it all out. If there's a place in you that can hear that lesson, just sometimes it's so much more important, as the Chinese proverb goes, something about taking a journey, it's always in the steps or something like that, rather than the outcome. Get it. Love is a process. Life is a process. Intimacy is a process. Marriage is a process. It's a long journey. Take a breath. Relax the conundrum as much as possible. And anything that we judge, I saw it in the Yugoslavia during the war after this particular episode. I looked into a mass grave. I knew that I could be the perpetrator or the victim in a heartbeat. And I invite you, we divide the world into good and bad, and it's good, but also we could do the bad. And so a lot of this training that we're into is called mind training, which is the second half of this early presentation and second session today. But another way to look at mindful intelligence is simply the training of states of consciousness, not just choosing them, but a developmental training. You strengthen these states, you become more adept in them. Fair enough? I want to encourage that kind of pragmatism, if you will. What are the states that you want to cultivate? Understand them as much as possible and commit ourselves to a developmental practice, training, and engagement with these states so that over time we can see them be enhanced. The second point, another state of mind I'd like to share with you before we get into a meditation. It's not easily understood within English or perhaps other European languages, but if you've not heard the word M-U-D-I-T-A, mudita, it's a very interesting word. Many people have heard the word metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, upekkha, equanimity. Mudita is a very interesting quality. And when you see it in someone, you often fall in love with them. It's like if you're wondering, like, what will you be attracted to? Intelligence, all the various things that are normal. But mudita is a super sexy state of mind. And what it's defined by is sympathetic joy. It means that when I feel Margaret's joy, I feel a sense of resonant happiness for her happiness. resonant happiness for her happiness, resonant happiness for her joy. And it's done in a nuanced, very intricate way that isn't overt, nor is it a one-time deal. It's done as, oh, how are you doing today? The general tendency in America is to get it over quickly. I'm doing great, had a wonderful day, how about you? Or, yeah, it's been really fucking miserable, I'll spend the next hour on it, but I don't want to bore you with it. Mudita basically says, ho, 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 I want to hear about it. Slow down. Take the drive out of the story. I want to hear about your day. Now I want to hear about your joy. Where did you find satisfaction? Where did you find growth? Where did you find kindness? Where did you find interest? Oh, I feel mudita for you. I want to know about how it happened. You want details. Why do you fucking want to know so much about my fucking happiness today, Alan? I'm just suspect of your story. There's got to be something involved here other than just pure transmission of consciousness. Is it the money? Do you like my body? Do you want my yoni? What the fuck is it on about?
Yeah.
There's got to be an ulterior motive, right?
Yeah.
So the more you exercise mudita, the more suspect you become. Especially to insecure people. Because it comes across sometimes as ingenuine because they're fucking ingenuine. So you got to be patient with mudita. So you got to kind of like, oh my God. No, I want to feel compassion for you. You got a high fever, you can't get out of bed. No, I can do it myself. You know, starved to death in bed, you can't drink. No, my father was like that. Under no circumstance, fucking help me. It's a sign of weakness. I'm a soldier. You know what I'm saying? So mudita is not forcing yourself on people's happiness. You got to be very nuanced about it. So tell me a little bit. Who was it that you met today that really excited you? I had this wonderful lunch today. You would not believe Vanessa. She's from the Ukraine. She's not your normal girl who's been here. She's a psychotherapist. She worked in refugee camps. And she talked to me a little bit about the joys of her life in a refugee camp. And rather than just simply passing that over, I asked her to explain. The truth of it was, we spent 5 hours talking about it. I had never felt so satisfied or met by simply leading with mudita. If you're looking for resonant intimacy and kindness that isn't so overtly sexual or outcome-based, no pun intended, but you basically take the thrust out of your presence by sitting back and hanging in this coevolutional sense of, let's talk about joy. And it's one of the greatest things around, mudita. So put it on your list if you're interested on states of mind that you feel might be valuable for you to cultivate. Mudita. And it creatively seeks to elevate the status of the other person's happiness beyond the experience itself. Are you with me on that? So a moment of joy, an afternoon of joy, becomes an elevated celebration, expanding the joy to something larger than the encounter. So we cultivate states of consciousness within the ecosystem of the life that we're in. Pause. I can't see more than a minute in front of me, and even that's blinding. 100 years from now, could you imagine if we had a flat screen the size of this whole veranda, and all of a sudden we could program in Ubud? 100 years from now? Ogung would probably go, oh my God, there's just like fresh lava on everything? God, where did I go? Where's my passport? Where's my notebook? It's possible. 65,000 years ago on Java, a volcano went off and erupted 3 foot of ash all over India and South Asia. 65,000 years ago is about 1 minute in existential time. Those volcanoes are active, right? I used Ogung for a reason. Guess what? We're going to die. Woo-woo! Take the boogeyman out of the story 100 years from now. You know? What do you imagine? Why are you going to hold back today from cultivating joy? Remember the joy factor in our lives. It's one of the things I've had to learn because I'm so adept at overcoming suffering. but very complicated when it comes to evolving elevated joy. Mudita. When you abscond from the intimacy of another person's happiness, you're abandoning yourself and you're abandoning the intimacy. How many of you are in relationships? No need to raise your hand. But one of the greatest ingredients to heal a divided marriage is to focus not on your sexuality, but on your mudita. Hey, how's the day going? Like it's fucked. Tell me how good it was to fuck. You know, you can joke with mudita. Oh, immediately when someone tells me they've had a difficult day, you're supposed to get solemn with them. It's a conscription into a state, isn't it? Statuesque means statue, stone-like, predictable. Often people who conscript people unknowingly into their sadness want them to puppet with them. Humor, laughter, satire, comedy is a total beautiful ingredient when it comes to mudita. Hey baby, it's just fucked. Hey, listen, it could get far worse than that, George. Why aren't you miserable with me? Because I love you too much to just descend in there. You're doing a better job at it yourself than I could help you with. You fucking witty fucking prick. Hey, listen, if you want to insult me, I can tell you some things that far outdo calling me a prick. God, you're really resilient today, aren't you, Alan? Yeah, I'm happy. How are you happy? Well, I'll tell you, you know, after I got over my onslaught of self-abuse, I was walking down the road and I saw a kitten, and I didn't usually stop and touch this kitten, but I stopped. I just felt so much satisfaction being human and vulnerable with this kitten. Wow. What did you feel? Mudita. Elevate, elevate. My point here is that it's not just the state of mind of mudita, and this is really good for women around men, if you're hetero, or even if you're not, that I find that men, one of the missing ingredients in men, especially younger men, is not to understand how much of a need they have to be valued, especially by women. Primarily because their fathers often devalued them or neglected by function, and therefore implicitly no longer valued the man. And so you lived in the atmosphere of being devalued. Now I think beyond that, most men need something far more than a relationship of incredible empowerment. They need to do things. I think it's an agricultural thing, a farming thing, and a probably, you know, back to the bison and the killing of big cats. We needed to kill. We needed to feel that we had something worthy to do. And so part of that worth development in your partner, I think, is very connected to the validation and the empowerment of the simplicities of normal joy. Does that make sense? And it's a beautiful way to support one another in our relationships together. It's one thing to wait for sickness to be compassionate. It's terribly boring just to be mindful together. Oh, well, I'm thinking, you're thinking, I'm thinking, we're watching each other's thoughts come and go. Fuck off, man. Go to a monastery. Or just simply sharing things that you've shared before. How many times have you said what you've said? How many times can you interrupt and give yourself your own mudita? So these states of mind isn't just applied to others, but I'm also ending with the point of how they're self-evolved inside of yourself. One of the things that I do and negate is self-satisfaction, self-joy. I'm in the treadmill of accomplishment. Not always, I exaggerate that, but okay, I walked up to the thing today. I'm really, really happy with the unfolding of this space. I said, just breathe into that, mudita. Congratulate yourself is another way to positively overcome self-denigrating states. Learn to, wow, you know, when I was starting out in yoga, I was in a constant state of comparison to people who could do things, so to speak, better than me. Obviously, good teachers and guides will help support you from that state of mind called comparison, betterment, but it happens all the time in meditation studios, it happens in yoga studios. And just look around, how many of us have evaluated each other in these 2 days? How well you do, how well they don't do. Mudita is taking the insecurity out of our being. It's not just being mindful of insecurity, it's proactive love. Self-love doesn't really work for me as a state of mind. It's a little bit too, I feel like I'm babysitting. But mudita speaks to me. It's like, Alan, be a little bit more in the stature, the willful kindness to yourself in accomplishments, in feeling satisfied. You ate a good meal. Allow yourself to feel good meal eaten, rather than getting out to the world and doing. You with me on that? Okay, so questions before we move on? Anything at all? Everyone's cool? We're okay? Please.
I can hear you okay at the back. I just wanted to let you know that I was put in charge of the microphone, and the microphone's up there if you need it. It's very important.
You want this one?
Yeah, she told me to make sure you knew the microphone was there.
Yeah, I don't know how to turn it on.
It's on now.
It's on now. Well, people, let me ask one more time. Who can't hear me well, or who would prefer the microphone on or off? Who wants it on? I'll just a microphone on? It's not going to work.
Microphone off.
Microphone off, yeah?
Yeah, it's good.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, namaste. If you have to use the washroom at all at this point, one on the back side, one on the front side, walk through here. If you want to get water, you can do that. We're going to move into a little bit of a period to expand upon meditation and the meaning of that and the application of that. I want to give a more full expression to that. Is that cool? Just one sec. Then we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and do a sitting meditation. And then another period of questions. And then another writing exercise before we leave today. Meditation is inseparable from the experiential study of the human organism. That's what it's meant to do, the study of it, for the purpose of feeling the textures of consciousness, emotions, what denigrates, what elevates. That's the meaning of meditation. The conscious choice to employ states of mind that function to accurately feel states of mind. You look in the mirror, it's a good mirror, not a fake mirror. You see reality rightly. Mindfulness functions to see a state of mind, a physical sensation as it really is. It's called seeing true nature. So here we are, clearly embodied, and meditation as an applied practice is to inhabit the body. Why? Because awareness safeguards consciousness from self-afflictive states and elevates beautiful states. Especially when you couple mindfulness or awareness with intelligence, then it discerns afflictive and beautiful. So the basis of embodied presence is the practice of mindful intelligence. Are you with me? Where do you practice it? Wherever you find your body. How do you practice that? Embody. So when we sit, if you haven't noticed, the instructions are to inhabit the body as if it was filling with the oxygen of intelligent, mindful awareness. That's all. So when I'm doing any kind of yoga asana, they talk about how to authenticate the pose, right? What does that mean? It means to inhabit the body. Mindfully aware of stresses, limitations, mimicry, inauthenticity, wandering mind. You're settling into a physically present experience. Fair enough? We're grounding ourselves in the body. I meet people for lunch or dinner, hanging in talk. Some people are out of their bodies. I feel at times that I'm out of my body. But when someone's embodied, they're hanging out in shared space. And there's a kind of, I don't want to get too overly romanticizing the poetry of movement, but I do believe in poetry. I do believe in romance. I do believe in eroticism. I do believe in aesthetics. So I'm going to contradict myself. I really do believe in poetry. I would include within your meditative embodiment, a very personal thing for me is poetry. What kind of poetry do you want to move in? We talk about attractors in each other. How do you want to be embodying the theater of your consciousness and body? A lot of people mimic the yogic life. How are you today? Really great. How was your teacher training? I did acro all morning, all night, all dream time. I just do fucking acro all the time. My back is so fucking straight. Have you noticed? I'm in the poetry of straight back. I just did a teacher training for 5 million people. They paid me $10 billion. I am the acro monkey of the universe. Hanuman, written on his chest. Poetry. Fuck you, Hanuman. Go back to fucking Bolivia, go back to Santa Monica, go back to Venice. Put your fucking head up your ass and smell it yourself, okay? You're filled with ego, the absence of poetry. Okay, that's an exaggeration. Nothing to acro yoga, but fuck off. Pretense is the opposite of poetry. Go to Bohemia on Thursday nights. I was blessed to go there, got stoned on smoke and poetry. But someone's riffing on a spoken word riff and it's just coming out as pretentious and why aren't you fucking clapping, man? Fucking smoking fucking assholes. Not going to come here anymore. It's an exaggeration, right? But pretense is very subtle. Embodied poetry is very different. You're in the naturalness of your own authenticity. Authenticity means being true to yourself, right? Keep it simple, dude. Let's make sure that meditation is keeping true to ourselves. Deep naturalness. Write these things down so you never forget them. Never have to buy a book on a shelf on meditation. Deep naturalness. What does that mean? I stopped going to yoga studios. Why? I finally had the courage to do my own asanas in the way that I wanted, for as long as I wanted, for as short as I wanted, in my sequence. Okay? Now I'm no longer dependent on the studio or the mat in the studio, and I'm no longer imprisoned by this incessant comparison that I can never get over. Now I'm just fucking living my life in the naturalness of my own asana sequence. Meditation is that. It's the embodiment of meditation, the no time off yoga. Not yoga off the mat, not meditation off the cushion, but a way of being, inhabiting. What is meditation? I am choosing to inhabit my body consciously. What I put in it, who touches it, how I touch it. So I put everything under examination, under the category of my body. My body. What do you do to your body in any given month? And write it down. How do you enhance it? How are you inhabit with it? And highlight the issue of how do you neglect it? Write it down. Write it down. So from that, I would go into the next category of that meditation is the study of not just bodily elements, of sensations, of heat and vibration, coolness, of tightness. Especially meditators, as they become more mindfully aware of their body, they realize, wow, I do yoga every day, I eat really well, but when I sit and meditate, Whew, I don't like what I see. It's like this thing is inherently a tangle of states of mind and physical emotions and energies, and all of a sudden, if we had a fast frame on God here, and all of us, at whatever age you find yourself today, you programmed in on this app that we have here that says all of a sudden Margaret goes from her existing age to, she happens to live to 103. And all of what that Dharma that she brought along that trajectory of those decades is now inhabiting that 103-year-old body. Be very, very watchful of thinking that you're going to find peace in your body because you're a meditator. Often it's a rude awakening to feel nature, and it's quite convulsive. And if you don't believe that, they'll tell you in a monastery or meditation center, how about just sitting longer than you normally do? You think you're cool, groovy, and concentrated? Well, sit for 2 hours rather than an hour. And you go like, fuck man, I cannot even sit still. I can't do it. Why? Because there's so much pain in my back and my neck. I'll tell you a couple of stories. You know, so many people think of meditating to overcome pain, but the truth of it is that you're going to learn to coexist with it for a life. Getting over things is not part of the deal. I would just really let that in. Learning how, and I learned this in revolutionary countries, you learn to coexist with fear, never overcome it. There might be the absence of it at times, but you'll never be ultimately fearless. This is what I've been told, and this is how I believe. The same thing with physical discomfort. I watched my mom and my brother. He had to take care of her physically. It was very intense. Very, very intense. That as we grow old, by the second, our bodies don't behave in any way that control indicates that we would like. We're at a very particular medium in life, youthful, younger, older, beautiful, who we are, what we are. But that is such a slippery slope. So much of meditation is seeing reality as it is. Impermanence isn't always pleasant. A lot of people who meditate have to overcome the projection that what I'm going to feel should be good. You go, whoa. What I'm challenging here is the attitude of projection upon the process. The body I'm seeing realistically is like, if I just sit and breathe, whoa, whoa. How many people I've watched cry, waking up from the delusion that they had a future. When they see their breath intimately and they're watching it come and go, they go, oh my God. That means it could end. Are you with me? So be very watchful of the projection on things. So it's the study of 5 perceptions, and the 6th perception is consciousness. What is meditation? I'm inhabiting, when I look at this gentleman, I'm looking at him with the highest quality of attention, care, compassion, kindness, empathy, listening, respect, that I want to be given to in my life. He is not less a priority than God. Why? Because I refuse to participate in apartheid. He is a valued human being because he is as he is, and I'm choosing to be in heightened states of mind. Meditation is reclaiming your personal power of choice to be the person you want to be. Know those constituents, stand in your artistry, and then, I'll close with this, I can't encourage it enough. I don't know about you, but there's something beautiful about people who are inclined towards aesthetics, sensuality. How many of you live in the world or the play of eroticism? I wanted to give a talk about eroticism today, spiritual eroticism, which I might if you're interested. And spiritualized, dharmified romance. What does it mean to be in sensual, spiritualized aesthetics with each other? What does it mean to be playfully engaged in consensual sensuality through consciousness? So a lot of the times that you see people, there's a great sterility, I call it. There's a great apartheid between the ideals of who I am and the manifestation of them in ordinary daily life. I have to wait for the erotic partner to be eroticized. You know what I'm saying? So I'm living in unrecognized apartheid all the time. And often those expectations don't get met. So lifting off preference, time, vocation, all the various things, I want to be an erotic being because it's a state of mind. I would ask you to ask yourself, what are the definitions and the operative energies required for you to inhabit your natural, non-sexualized eroticism that re-inhabits the meaning of the word through consciousness, through sound, through look, through shared space. We don't physically touching, but we're always touching, aren't we? Don't you find it even more intimate to be in consciousness together? Being touched is so clearly being touched, but being touched by consciousness, it's so ineffable, so goddess-like. Those who make love sapio through consciousness are the real lovers. It's the absence of intercourse, so to speak, that you finally emerge into your spiritualized lover. It's those who want to kiss, not apart, but within a shared space. And then eventually, perhaps, there's a finger touch on your lip. Why do something that you've done before when you can reinvent these qualities? My point is, what do these words mean to you? And be watchful of postponing them or thinking that someone will respond to your bio on Tinder. Be in the expression that you seek. That's a very important phrase for me. Be in the expression that you seek. Walk around in the manifestation of your bio. Don't just leave it there to be a lie. Take the Botox out of your mind. Take the filler out of your fucking consciousness. That kind of thing. Are you with me? So this is the aesthetic to meditation. And I would encourage you to take the sterility as much as possible out of sitting or walking or talking. Bring in joy, bring in mudita, bring in playfulness, bring in satire, bring in humor, bring in dimensionality. Be in lover space with each other. And that's something very beautiful, I think. As I die, as you die, as the earth dies, gets regenerated, I think, I hope, I pray. The greatest resilience at all is not meditation, but it is the fine energy of shared love. So to de-spiritualize that love and to create it as human as possible. I don't want to go into transcendent states alone with you. I've done enough psychedelics to make that real. But I want to be human with you. I want to be so respectful of trust and safety, yeah? And integrity. Don't let me do anything that you don't want to do. Hold me accountable to that shared space, yeah? But at the same time, we're both on the shared stage of existential reality. What is your aesthetics? I walk into people's homes. Look at the artistry in this room alone. Look at how we dress, how we put things on our body, how we undress, the foods that we put in. How well do you dress in the monastery? How did you put your robes on today? When I stopped smoking in 1997, one of the things that I noticed the most about my life was the neglect I had for beauty. I was in hurry to accomplish a lot of the time. I admit this, I'd often have sex to smoke afterwards. What guy doesn't? Even when you don't smoke. Despite the fact that and so it was like, what in the fuck, Jose? I stopped smoking. It was like, God, you couldn't have sex fast enough. Or you just stopped being sexual. And that was the latter for me. It's like, wow, the incentive to have sex has been gone now. I no longer can smoke. And so I went, wow, that is fucking retarded, man. And so I had to learn how to beautify my life. So I stopped taking showers and took only baths. Slowed the whole thing down. Meditation is implicitly meaning that you're slowing the whole thing down. Yes, you can talk fast and move fast. Yeah, you can dance as fast as you want. But stay inside in the coherence of it being done with dignity and stature, aesthetics. My point here is aesthetics. How do you want to play? Beautifying, I bought soaps for the first time. I washed my face. I bought foods. I stopped eating out, started to cook. Took my time with the process of being. Meditation implicitly means trying to chill a little bit when you're painting or you're on your iPhone with your video game. Maybe it's done better slower. Maybe the pace in which the app developer made it is neurotic compared to your own frequency. Maybe the whole damn thing needs to be set down. I want to invent my own game. If you don't like the news, create some of your own. If you don't like the books that you read, write your own. If you don't like the persons that you're not meeting, be the person that you would like to meet. In aesthetics, eroticism, romance, and sensuality, and spiritual intelligence, those 5 things are the sexiest things on earth, especially if it's infused with Dharma mindful intelligence. Creative, playful, satirical, comedic, sexy, mindful Dharma intelligence. Somehow even people who can't move. I have known paraplegics, people who have no eyesight, no legs. They are super sexy. They have aesthetics. So I invite you to open up to that domain more than you probably already have. It takes the doldrums out of day to day. The way you get up out of bed, do you do it in a way that's actually sensual, aesthetic, or are you waiting to go to the yoga studio to finally move back into your body? In a monastery, they would talk to you, do not ever wait for the meditation gong to go off to sit. And they would interrupt the habit of thinking that sitting was preferential. Alan, talk to me about how you washed your face when you were bathing today. And so they cut you right back to the moment all the time. And the point here is, how able are you to be the lover that you seek by employing conscious states of consciousness upon your own mind and body? I found that one of the most redeeming things in my life. It took the loneliness out of my day. So, questions, and then we'll take a break and meditate. Josh?
So, at what point does that become its own expectation? Right? So, right now, in my body, I'm a little bit faded out right now. Just didn't sleep much last night. Tired. If I check in, it's not that I'm nauseous, but being so out of it is its own destabilizing effect on my body that I can feel. Right? So, I have that lived experience, and yet there is the desire to be as artistic as possible, or as embodied in a higher way than that as possible, right? But I'm not really finding the energy to do that. So do you just call out, and it's I'm gonna nap instead of show up to that thing because I can't be my full artistic self? Do you simply accept it, and it's okay, this is the role I'm playing right now, is kind of just out of it right now? At what point does it become the its own expectation?
Well, when there's enough down experiences and you glide through them through your suggestion of the nap, or reevaluate how you lived the day before, the night before, whether you put on a big stoner and a drinker and whatever you needed to do, I'm not suggesting that you did that, then you understand what you've done to create the conditions you're in. And you evaluate, you take care of business, next thing you know, you pick yourself up. I'm in that moment of ooh, this is cool, man. I'm going out, I'm going to dress up, I'm going to fucking do my thing. I'm in my artistry. What am I going to do on the stage of my existence with you? Now, in that moment, you have the choice to either just fucking live your beautiful, playful, aesthetic dream, or to go on a nap and find a partner if you're single, or to dance with the random stranger that you meet, or you have a dream, which is, I want to sustain this elevated, artistic, playful, sensual, erotic space. I want to fucking create something rad. What might that be? You take your notebook, you have a glass of wine, you go, fuck man, I could go off on a date tonight, but I'm not. I'm going to write down and what I have a dream. I want to fucking write a play about the complexity of life, the ups and downs, the struggles to be true. Next thing you know, it's on Broadway. I saw a play recently on Broadway, blew my mind, of a high school student. It was so profound, a musical, that it just so inspired me to take my creative life more intimately, more awake, more seriously, that I'm determined when I come back out of Burma February 25th, I'm going to spend 2 months here and write that play. I'm speaking to myself. This is how I talk. Learn to have that dialogue with yourself. If you're an artist, a lover, be your best guide. That's been my experience. Learn how to talk to yourself. So, relative artistry, middle level, and higher altitude expressions. How do you want to play on all fronts? And, carpe diem. Make notes. Notes today lead to outcomes tomorrow. And there's a deep satisfaction in that process, right? That's the real reward. That's the real play, is to feel the reward of engaging existence and creating something on this tapestry of shared space that really matters. You're a man that matters. I've listened to you now for a couple of hours. I had the good blessing to have dinner with you last night, as a few other people here did. You're smart, you're sensitive, you're open, you're transparent. You've got so much to offer, man. So I would just keep, as you do what you need to do to fortify the elements of the wakefulness, at the same time really validate your depth of worth. That's how I want to be spoken with. Validate, yes, I am on. I am sensitive, I am reflective, I am a man of mindfulness and improvement. I've got a voice. What am I going to do with that voice? I've got hands. What am I going to do with those hands? So maybe you speak that way, but so if I'm saying things you already know, excuse me. Other questions or things about meditation that might be important about what we're talking about? Take your time, think in deep. Anything about what you're writing? Any places inside? I hope you've been taking some notes about the meditative process, because that's your best guide to understand meditation in the future. Those little signposts, those phrases, those words are really immeasurably important. I'll go over them again too. They're not complicated for me. I've made a life journey out of that. But are there questions?
I'd love to look some more into the beautiful states of mind, because of the fact that I've been a therapist, I can ream off every other state. But it was quite interesting today to sit with beautiful states of mind and what that would really mean, if you don't
Okay.
mind answering
I will, thank you. It's just such a lovely question. I want to know more about beautiful states of mind.
Yeah.
Let me say it anecdotally, a story. I have a number of mentors in my life. Several of them have passed away. A number of them are from the country of Myanmar and Burma. One man, and those of you who come to Burma with me or on this tour, you will meet this gentleman. He is the senior most politician of Burma's revolutionary government, who went from the general of the army under the dictator, who was imprisoned by the men in solitary for 6 years with nothing. And when he was released, he came to the monastery where I was living. He ordained as a monk. I was given a room near mine, and in that process, I learned about Burmese politics, about the psychology of dictatorship, and the psychology of totalitarianism. Simultaneous to being mindful of my own life, he taught me about mindfulness of context, complex context. It was a very beautiful meeting. He was about 25, 30 years older than I was. He's quite old now. He's had a stroke, he can't speak, but he's lucid. I saw him not long ago. Back when he was released his second time from prison, now 12 years of solitary, I had the good fortune to interview him, and I asked him, among many questions, one particular question. I said, "Sir, you've spent now many years incarcerated in solitary confinement." And I asked him simply, how do you get through the darkest times when you're in solitary? And he's included in these books that I'm about to publish in February. But in a nutshell, we were sitting at Aung San Suu Kyi's lakeside house, and he looked at me with these breathtakingly blue-brown eyes and this handsome face. He's a gorgeous man. And Burmese culture allows men and women, but primarily men, the good fortune to be intimate with each other. So they like holding hands. They're very physical, especially in the monastery. And so he grabbed my hands like this and just squeezed them. And it was very reassuring to me that I was making contact with him, because I could feel the pressure he applied to my hands. It was like the confidence to know that we were connecting. And he looked at me right in the eye and said, "Alan, remember back when we were monks together years ago and you got quite ill? You got quite ill and you were walking through the village on alms round and you were moaning and groaning like a good American does, and you were saying that you're going to die if you don't get medicine. And we went back to the monastery and you were given antibiotics and the dysentery went away. And you felt like now you were Jesus walking on water." He said, "You ask me how do you get through the most difficult times in prison? There are no medicines." And I went, "Oh my God. I just got bronchitis. I was blessed to have some support on where to get antibiotics. I stopped them yesterday. Without that, I felt like I was going to really whoa, this is really intense, really intense." The idea of not living with medicines, he said, there's no pillows, there's no blankets. "Alan, how often do you go to the toilet and expect toilet paper or water? There's no toilet paper, there's no water. You're asking me how do you get through the most difficult times? Getting through a day." He didn't say that exactly. There's no toothbrushes, no toothpaste. There's no bed, no running water, no choice of food. I'm thinking I'm re-traumatizing him, but he goes on. He's holding my hand, squeezing it. "The food is so disgusting, it's not even fit for dogs. And all the while I'm eating this because it's what's given to me, and without food, there is no nutrient. But I always felt resentful that they feed us this shit. And I was always being disturbed by the attitude of how bad the food was. And here I was as a revolutionary leader, leading a country along with other people in the power of nonviolence, the power of forgiveness, the power of reconciliation, and I'm throwing away my good conscience by judging food every day, morning and afternoon." Are you with me? Beautiful states of mind.
Yep.
He said, "I saw this after some time because we trained in mindfulness, and I began to include the more nuanced areas of shadow." He didn't say that, but okay. Oh, wow, I saw that about myself. And what he did, he said, I chose to interrupt that habit. I decided to feel the nature and the struggle of my jailers. They too were hungry but had very little food, and although they thought they were free, they lived in the prison. They were equally prisoners. He shifted the attitude. He began to give them one of his meals. Rather than to eat it mindfully, he gave it away to feed his jailers. Beautiful state of mind. He said as a result of this, hear this, he felt more nutrient vitality in giving away the food than eating it. It's not what you eat, how you eat alone. You see what I'm saying? Beautiful states of mind. Grace that wretched dog food with dignity. That's the mantra. Grace, and they used to howl. Ooh, you'd hear this all the time. It was a respected mantra in the culture. grace that dog food with dignity and humor and rise above it. Beautiful states of mind, yeah? He still had judgment for those jailers whom were the colonels and the captains and ultimately the coterie of men and women who were the dictators of the country. He couldn't help but feel, again paraphrasing, it's been written about in one of my books, God damn it, they've taken my freedom from me. They've taken my freedom. Think about that phrase. They took what is mine that can't be given without my permission. Hear that? They took my freedom from me. They took my freedom from me. He said that particular pattern of consciousness was not included in his mindful awareness. Ironically, fortuitously, synchronistically, one of the jailers gave him some verses of Jesus, smuggled them to the... He said, I knew nothing about Christianity or Jesus. I was a Buddhist. He read these verses on forgiveness. They know not what they do. Very powerful. We do what we do out of conditioned ignorance or wisdom. Their parents and their parents and their heritage. Where do you start with the collective ignorance? Where do you basically say, he was the most abusive father on the planet. He was the most neglective male on the planet. He said there was no origin to the dictator. And so he saw this, they know not what they do. And he began to see this translation as, why am I absconding from my dignity and my conscience? A beautiful state of mind. He made a mindful choice to re-inhabit. Their freedom is their freedom, and my freedom is my freedom. And my freedom is not theirs to take unless I give it to them. Hear that, yeah? I can't take away my beauty unless I choose to. I want to make conscious, mindful choices to inhabit the good, the true, and the beautiful in me. Am I willing to have that kind of ethical, spiritual courage? He summoned the courage to reclaim the projection. He felt empowered. Squeezing my hand. A beautiful state of mind. He went on to talk, and he ended the day squeezing so tightly. And he said, Alan, when the going got really, really, really immeasurably dark and tough, I would close my eyes, and he was looking at me directly into my eyes. And he's holding my hand up like this and squeezing it. I would look into my mind's eye. Hear this. When it really got difficult, and I would recall moments of love. I would see my wife in my mind's eye, and I would see it so fully. So fully. I saw her face, the color of her eyes, her lipstick, the fragrance of her perfume, the smell of her body, the radiance of her mind. Imagine spending 12 years in solitary and you're going through the darkest, most horrific time without a toilet, toothbrush, contact. And basically he's saying how you got through was choosing a beautiful state of mind. I remembered moments of love. I'd never forget this. I've said this so many times, but it's so real. I'm going to see him again next week. And I would bring her into the present. I heard her words. I felt those words. Imagine, I love you. 12 years later, I'm recalling that moment. Think about it. It's pretty breathtaking. I don't know about you, but I have so many random moments in the day where the quality of that presence is somehow compromised by this or that. But in this particular case, he's saying, you've asked me the question, I'm bringing my wife to the forefront of my consciousness. So just take a moment. He had a wife. I've often asked this, what would you bring to the forefront of your life in moments of darkness like that to remind you of your goodness, your sanity, your epic qualities of goodness and beauty, survival states, elevated states? He's the leader of a revolution. He's calling upon a moment of love with his wife, his son, with Aung San Suu Kyi, with his teacher, with me. And he concluded, I would bring the memory of love from the past and feel it as an energy in my body in the present. And he said, Alan, it's the warmth of love that gets you through the darkest times. And I'll never forget that. We talk about meditating, but for me, the encounter with other, how high can the quality of that reverential intimacy be? Because it may very well be that this moment that I'm looking at you, or looking at you, or looking at you, I have to recall that moment. I will want to recall that moment. Maybe you're not as receptive as I am. Maybe you're not as receptive as I am. Maybe you are more receptive than I am. Maybe we're both receptive. But you never know, whether we're incarcerated or not. But we are incarcerated in a larger prison cell called the end of life as we know it. The future of life is in jeopardy as we know it. There's been 5 previous extinctions. We're on to the 6th. All of us, in ways, we're existential prisoners of conscience, having to keep alive revolutionary qualities, thank you for the question, of beauty. That's the vocation of the existential soldier, the warrior, the revolutionary, the savant, the student of God, the embodiment of truth, the magic of spirituality, call it what you will, the dance with duality. It's the evolution of beautiful states of mind. And whether we live on or there's life after us, we've been the caretaker of beautiful states of mind. Where did your love originate? Where did your love originate? Your mother, her mother. Who knows 12 mothers back? Who knows 100 mothers back? Who knows 1 billion years of mothers back? We're the inheritors and the carriers. Fair enough, I'll end with this. So I invite us to, yes, we have our personal desires to manifest and to embody, but find a relevance in developing beautiful states of mind, Alan, purely because it's right. It's an act of conscience. So that's my friend Utinu, 90-something now, 92. And when you see him, he's in a wheelchair with his wife, who's attending to him. They hold hands incessantly. He laughs and looks at you. There's not a bone in him that seems to be a victim of anything. It's quite amazing. So anything else that you would like to talk about before we take a break? You good? What time is it? Anyone have a... What time? 3 o'clock? 3:20. So take, if you would, like about 15 minutes. So about 25 to 4. We'll come back and do a sitting meditation with the next level of instruction. Thank you very much.